Hey, Jason Rice here with LotParty. And again, a little description of the show. You know, if you've ever worked in a dealership and done a lot party, you know what that means. You get out there, you stir that lot up around, move cars around to maybe get them in the hot spot, or maybe you put the trucks to the front or to the back and the cars over here and over there. Basically stirring up the inventory for all that lot traffic to make that lot look different. Or maybe it's just snowed and you got to go out there and clear out the snow and have a big lot party. Everybody's involved. Well, that's what this show's about. But we're talking about your virtual lot. Maybe we need to stir up your virtual lot to drive more traffic, or again, maybe you have something like a mess out there, like a bunch of aged inventory, and we got to clean it up. So again, this is what this show is all about. And what we're going to talk about today is I want to interview and go over these Highline stores, Infiniti, Acura, BMWs, Mercedes, these type of stores that are Highline stores that try to do velocity, because that's a big struggle for a lot of these stores. A couple reasons why, where, and how they got to buy those cars. One, they got to deal with a lot of transportations. Two, they got to bid up really high for these cars. Three, a lot of them are certifying them. That costs a lot of money to not just certify them, but then the parts and everything. And then also do have to do with parts holds and things like that. So very few dealerships that are Highline stores do a successful velocity. Now, some of the stores which is acceptable, instead of doing a 60-day turn policy on those type of cars, they maybe push it out to 75 to 90 on their quote-unquote core cars, like if they're Infiniti store, they're Infinitis. But then they do a 60-day philosophy on anything else that they carry on their lot, the Chevys and the Fords and whatever else they might have on their lot, which again is acceptable as long as they keep that lean and clean on these Highline stores. But just like I said last week, on these small town dealerships, a lot of them say, hey Jason, I'm a small town, my market's a little different. The laws of velocity, the laws of money management is no different if you're a Highline store or a small town domestic store, and that is turning those dollars. A 5 or 10% shift in market on a 60 grand Mercedes is a bigger impact than on a 15 grand Focus. Either way, it's a good chunk of money. But when you talk about a 10% adjustment, maybe over 60, 90-day period on 60 grand, we know that's $6,000. On a 15 grand car, it's only $1,500. Now, equally, they might have the same amount of markup, but those 2-3% shifts in market, which happen sometimes within 2-3 weeks on any given car, are making a bigger impact on these higher dollar stuff. So I think, if anything, your higher end dealership, these cars that have these high average investment dollars, these dealerships out there with those high average investment dollars, need to be more efficient with that inventory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to interview a dealer that runs a lean and clean inventory of an Acura and Infiniti store. And then I'm also going to bring in a sister store. It's a Jaguar Land Rover store, and his new adoption to velocity. He just came around about a month ago, and you know, he used to be, you know, let's hope and change. Let's hope I can get somebody to pay too much for my car, or maybe that the market changes and he's holding on to these high dollar inventory and it was costing him. And he was back and forth on the philosophy, but over the last month he's kind of converted. So we're going to interview with both of those together, and we're going to actually go over, you know, what the benefits are, what the struggles are, and what are these best practices. So let's go right in the interview, because I'm sure we're going to be debating back and forth for a bit. Thanks. Hey guys.
Hey Jason.
This is Jason Rice. I'm going to be interviewing here. We got Sean and Mark. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Again, these are dealers that are running a really tight ship, running Highline stores, Acura and Infiniti, and a Land Rover Jag store. So first, I'll start with you guys. Sean, let's go ahead and start with you. Introduce yourself, your position, your store, and maybe a little bit more information about, you know, just some of your background in the car business.
Yeah, my name is Sean Gleason. I'm the general manager at Joe Bullard Acura and Infiniti Mobile. We do about 100 cars a month between both stores, roughly 50 and 50 to 60, 50 at Acura and 50 to 60 at Infiniti. Predominantly used. Our new cars, we run about 20 to 25 new per store a month, and used, between 30 and 38 per store a month. We've grown that over the past 2 years to where we can do 100 cars a month. Mobile isn't a very big city. It's a very old city. We've got about, Mark and I were talking about 250,000 people in Mobile. We've also run a bunch of numbers to where, for instance, December, we only sold about 35% of the market to the city of Mobile. So we do a lot of outside Mobile City. We've got Gulfport, Mississippi, 45 minutes away. Pensacola, Florida, is 45 minutes away. But Baldwin County is a big part of our market, which is the county neighboring to us, closer to Pensacola, and it is a bigger market for us as far as luxury cars are concerned. I've been in the car business my whole life as far as work is concerned.
Okay.
I got introduced. I got asked to come sell cars 4 days after I turned 21 because I could put on the insurance. But and then I sold cars for a year, and then I graduated from college with a finance degree, and I got into an F&I position here at this company, and I did that for 5 years. And then after I got through doing finance, I got asked to be a used car inventory manager. My dad was a wholesaler in town. He was a wholesaler for about 15 years, and so I had a pretty good grasp on the wholesale market and buying and selling. And so I did that for almost 4 years, and then I was general sales manager for a year for this campus, Joe Bullard Acura and Infiniti Mobile, and just recently became the general manager. So excited to see what this other side of the world revolves around as far as service is concerned. So it'll be interesting to learn fixed, but that's me.
Well, two things on this. One, I know you've been in kind of velocity mindset pretty much your whole career managing used car inventory, but I want to maybe hit you up a little bit later here, talk about some of that nuances that your dad kind of brought, because I think he was pretty big in town there, which really kind of set you up for where you're at. And then to Mark, let you introduce yourself, but you've kind of, and again, we'll dig in more into this, but kind of come to your way about doing velocity instead of the hope and change or driving that high volume. So Mark, go ahead and introduce yourself too.
I'm Mark Hyder. I'm the general manager at Jaguar Land Rover Gulf Coast. I've been in the car business since 1995. Most of my experience was as a new car sales manager. I've been a general sales manager. I've been with our company since June of '04. And the used car side, I decided I wanted to be in charge of that for a little while, so if I'm going to hire a used car manager, I'd have a better idea what was going on. I've always been under the principle of gross, but after doing a simple inventory analysis, a turn analysis, being how much more money I could make if I turned more inventory, and then having some big wholesale losses with a highlight store, decided to give velocity a try. Did it for a month, and it was very successful. And then I decided to stop doing it for the month of December because we sold so many cars. And then, Jason, as you know, it's about the 10th day in, we weren't selling anything, and so we got aggressive. And so really, in the last 50 days, we sold 70 cars, roughly. I'm running out of cars. I'm trying to buy cars right now.
Yeah. That's the hard part about it is just keep feeding the beast, once you do get to that, and then it's just a matter of feeding the beast. Now, as both your stores are starting to move in velocity into that turn, because I think we're looking at your numbers earlier, Sean, you're initially, I know we've been working together for a few months now, and your turn was about 10 or 11. Now it's touched up in the 15s and stuff, and stays around 13 to 15 turns. Now, both of you guys, I guess one can answer it each time. What's the biggest challenge right now with the inventory as you're dialing down that velocity and getting rid of age and turn that inventory quicker? What would you say is the biggest challenge? Turnaround time, buying? I mean, I know all of them are, but what's the biggest one right now?
Probably, I think buying is a large part of it. I mean, being that we don't have, I know Mark can attest to this too. We're not selling 50, 60, 70 new cars a month to where we get a bunch of trade-ins. I'm selling, 20 to 30 depending on at each store, and typically your new cars is where you get nice new car trades, that you can certify and sell and buy them at the price that you can get them for. You don't have to worry about paying the auction, paying to transport them here. You get to see it, taste it, touch it, smell it, kind of thing, and get to put your number on the car, and then get to justify your number to the customer. So obviously, not having enough trades, that's really kind of been the importance of it. We don't miss car deals based on trades. Jason has shown me a couple little tricks, as far as, we want to make $3,000 on each trade-in, but really that not all cars justify $3,000 gross profit when we go to do that appraisal in the auto. So, there's different terms that we're using, but the key to it is to make sure that you appraise the car with the right recon, because if you miss that, that's where you can really miss the boat, especially if you're going to put an extra grand into the vehicle, to get the car. So in turn, I think acquisition of vehicles is the biggest hurdle that we have, because just everybody else is trying to buy cars too and fighting against the CarMaxes of the world and the big stores. So.
Yeah, I was just talking to a dealer today, smaller town but domestic, looking over appraisals. I think they were looking at a car where we just didn't have the equity, and they assumed about $800 in recon, but it was off by like $600. And when we looked at it, it's really about 30% of that car's value, that there are of the recon value. I'm sorry, 30% off on recon numbers. Really was $1,300. We missed almost 50% of our actual recon costs. So dialing that recon dollar down and getting really specific about it is real important. Now, Mark, are you running through the same challenges or a little something different?
Yeah, I mean, acquiring vehicles has been this because I'm selling cars so quickly. Like right now, we looked today. We had a meeting today. I've got 29 cars in inventory, and I'm sitting on 26 cars for the month. Got 2 going right now. I'm going to sell, almost 40 cars, and I'm going to only have 20 on the ground. So,
yeah.
I mean, I've got to get cars.
And I can already think or hear what people are thinking out there. Well, it's easy. They only got 29, 30, 50 cars. Try to do that with 100, 150 Highline. And I think it's just as it's just as challenging, if not more, because I just did an interview. My last show was on a small dealer. That manager. He tries to do everything. He has to, his photo person's missing for a week. He's doing photos. He's doing all these other things. So one, he doesn't have the manpower. 2, one mistake on 30 cars, especially when you're talking a 50, 60, 70 grand car, you're off 5%. That could blow your whole month, right, on just 1 or 2 cars.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't have some of that volume to make up some of those mistakes. So dealers, that the first thing is, for the people watching this, they go, well, they've got small enough inventory, it should be easy for them. There's a lot bigger challenges. So one of the challenges, and I think you hit on it a little bit about appraising cars. A lot of dealerships are hesitant to do proxy bids or bid online and not go touch feel the car. What percentage, especially when you're buying $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 cars, I think your avenue is a little bit more trustworthy of buying cars, kind of a little bit sight unseen. But how much are you actually buying at the lane, physically buying at the lane, versus buying online and having them shipped to your store?
Mark and I both, none of us go to the auction.
100% online.
100% online.
I actually do a few proxy bids, but Sean doesn't normally do that. But.
So you guys are buying 30, 40, 50 plus grand cars sight unseen in a way. You're
right? Everything's condition reported. You got condition report.
Yeah, condition report.
Auction
photos,
things of that nature. We can paint the picture. We just got to get creative with it and make sure all the pictures are there and be, and make sure we cross all our T's and dot all our I's.
So for some of those dealers that are hesitant, I'm sorry, Mark, did I interrupt you?
Like if a certain auction, if the cars stay 430 seconds, they're probably 330 seconds, and you probably have to replace at least half of them. So you just learn that after a couple times.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're represented pretty well. If you buy 10 of them, 6 or 7 of them will be exactly what they say.
Well, and some guys just want to touch the car, regardless of condition report and everything else, because they say there's things to be missed. But one of the things I think I try to let dealerships understand too, the more you bid online, the more you get to know the auctions. A 3.5 or 3.8 condition report in Chicago might be totally different than the one in Jersey, right? So you start learning those nuances, and then you can overcome those, right? Yeah. No different than going to the auction. A certain auctioneer is making up bids that somebody's outbidding you stuff. There's this way you learn auctioneers. You can learn the condition reports online.
Yeah, and I've been introduced. I got a buyer down in Orlando that does a lot of work for us. I introduced him to Mark, and he's been buying cars for Mark as well, which has been a very great thing for us. I know that he's probably done well for Mark, and he does great for me. He buys probably 2 or 3 cars a week for me. So then I still get some of that, in the lane, non-condition report, can touch the car for me, and I trust them 100%. So that's just a small part of how we get cars.
But Jason, you know what's not hard anymore?
What's that?
It's priced in a vehicle. It's not.
Yeah.
It's so simple that it doesn't matter what you own the car for anymore. If you just price it the way you're supposed to price it, that's the easy part of my job. Like now when we have meetings, we don't really talk about it that much.
Yeah.
Once you believe, I'm a believer now.
That's a good point to bring up, and that's what I want to kind of discuss here. One of the things I challenge dealers with, because a lot of times they say, well, I can't price a car. I don't know. It hasn't been through service. I don't know why I own on it yet. And I would ask them, to me it makes perfect sense, is can you appraise a car with a customer without knowing their payoff? And they go, well, yeah.
The same thing.
Because the car's worth what it is. Yeah, it's the same concept. So is that, have you always priced out the gate? And maybe this is more for Mark than it is Sean, but I mean, is that something you just overcame and that is helping you with velocity as far as a tip to some of these dealers out there?
Sure. I used to just mark them up $4,000 or whatever, and then lowered it at 15 days, and at 30 days, and at 45 days. It worked every time I sold one.
Yeah.
The problem was
so you
didn't
used,
sell them.
so you sat on them until...
At 45 days.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I just talk to dealers about, and I say, that strategy, they don't want to get political here, and I'm not making sides here, but the Obama strategy is either hope and change. You either hope that somebody comes in and pays too much for that vehicle, or that the market changes and your price becomes relevant. And that's where a lot of dealerships do sit on, especially the high dollar dealerships, because they don't want to make a $500 deal or even a $1,000 deal on a $50,000 car that they certified and spent $2,000 to certify the thing.
The key to it, in my opinion, is just take all car deals. We live in a town and a market where we don't get a whole bunch of opportunities. It's not being that we are luxury, we're not, we're not a volume store. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to become a volume store, and that's what we're trying to push on our Acuras and Infinities, but it's very difficult. So the key to it is take all car deals, because you don't have people lining up to look at that exact same car tomorrow or the next day, and so every car deal makes sense, especially when we price them accordingly and we build value in the vehicle, and the price gets them in, and they've looked at our car online, and they've got they half the time they know more about the vehicle than my salespeople do. So there's that to me is my biggest thing, is whether it's a $500 deal, a $2,000 deal, whatever, and then also to giving my finance department the chance, because they're strong and I lean on them, and they're my horse. So them running $1,200, $1,300 a copy sure makes it a little bit easier to take that $200, $300, or $15 or $1,000 loser. We've had $3,000 back end deals where we lost $1,500 on the front. That's a $1,500 car deal. That's great. So that's where I've had to put my eggs in this basket. With the cost of certification, the amount that it charges to get it to certified, and because we have to represent the brand, and you have to do those things the manufacturer requires you to. You got to live in that world.
So, Sean, going back to your father being a wholesaler, and again, I think we talked about this before, he's pretty well known in town, and tends to be sometimes in my mindset the wholesaler is that old school car guy that's all about the gross and all about the average. So, getting into the business and kind of growing up that way, was that your mindset initially, or have you always kind of understood the velocity and the turn?
I got kind of lucky. Obviously my dad being a wholesaler, he always told me, you work the used car man like you work a retail customer, and it's just unfortunately the margins are lower. But whenever I came into an inventory manager position, that was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. That was when V-Auto was up and coming. Dale Pollitt was writing books. He talked about velocity, and of course we read those books. And so that was, at that time, that was the way of the age. That's what we had to do, was turn, and us being a luxury store, I mean, we're on a 60-day turn, and it's tight. I mean, it is very difficult to do. We got to lean on our service department and on our detail shop to get everything ready. But I never really kind of had that mindset. And mine was, if you sell enough vehicles and you turn them fast, then the gross profit's going to come. And so my mindset isn't where am I at month to date gross profit. It is how many cars do I have out. Typically on the 20th or about right now, I'll start looking at that gross and saying, man, we're going to be in a hole or we're not. But 9 times out of 10, if you sell enough vehicles, it takes care of itself. Having that mindset, my dad he doesn't know anything about that. He didn't know anything about velocity or that turn. But also, too, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have that as their biggest marketing strategy, and everything that you have to do now lives there. So I think that with the change in time and the change in turning of the guard, that you have to be there or you're not going to make it.
Well, you know what? You bring that up. I think most wholesalers get it internally, though, because they're sitting on a car. Those guys get rid of the car within a few days. They figure out a buyer. They don't buy it without knowing somebody that they can dump today. They don't hold on to cars 30 days just to wait for that right guy to come buy it. They'll go dump it within a day or two. So directionally, they kind of understand it, because they got to get off of it to free that dollars up so they can go buy the next car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, Mark, now, as Sean's going through that transition in his career and over the last few years, you kind of were, I guess, exposed to it, but you kind of fought it. What was the biggest challenge for you to overcome looking at that, other than this saying you've always been a gross guy? But, you know, when guys are saying, yeah, but this and yeah, but that, when they're talking about velocity, what was your biggest, you know, objection to it?
I mean, it was still the mindset. I've been graded that way forever. We've always looked at gross per profit. How much you make on a car deal, and even recently I traded in a non-brand, but it was a luxury car. I looked at the day supply on it was 180 days, and so I appraised it so I could be the number one priced car in the market. I sold it the very next day. I made $3,500, and my first thought was I didn't have it marked up on it. But my return on investment was absurd, and so it made complete sense. But I'm just so conditioned to looking at gross, and that was still my first thought, you know, that I might have missed some money there.
Yeah.
And it's a car that I don't perform well with. I've had a few of them, and they've all gotten old on me. So it's made a huge difference.
Well, there's two things that I always notice with managers. One of the worst things that can happen to a used car manager is they make $3 or $4 grand on that 70-day-old car, because a lot of times we think we could do that again. Hey, remember that car? We made $4 grand. Let's hold out. One, but two, that you go home on car deals like that sold so quick, you have nightmares that you go, man, I cheap sold that car. I could have got another 500 grand, but you don't know what you don't know. You know, again, if they don't, that customer may never have came in. They might have skipped over your car, went buy something else, and that next buyer just isn't at the doorstep yet.
But what happens? You think it's just going to be one car that I'm going to do that on, that I'm going to not get rid of, and I'm not going to price it right. And the next thing you know, you got 6 of them, and now you have issues.
So I would say, you know, again, I appreciate you guys' time. And one of the couple things I want to wrap up here, we got a couple minutes. I know turnaround time's a big struggle. We were just talking about that today with the photo management stuff. What's your average turnaround time right now for you guys?
Well, we just came off of a December where every store is having the best month ever, and so the turnaround time was, I don't know, 10 days, 11 days. Now, I'm getting cars out in 2 days.
Yeah, mine's probably 5 max.
Yeah, it's pretty efficient now.
Yeah, and that all equals dollars. That faster that you could turn that turnaround time, and especially some of the stores take advantage of doing auction photos, 3 or 4 of those auction photos until that car's ready through the service and in and out. Or sometimes they're taking.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, just to have something on there,
Yeah. Yep. And you're missing those SRPs and those VDPs if not, and you're spending all that money to get those SRPs and VDPs, and we're wasting it when those photos aren't there. And I guess as we wrap up here, what would you say that those highline dealers that still are fighting that pushback? What would be one tip that you'd give the dealer to say, hey, if you just focus on this and get over this, what would that be? And Sean, I'll start with you.
Go get an ROI calculator and just plug it in. Because if you do that, then you'll understand that that's where you got to live. That by turning the inventory, you will make a lot more gross and a lot more net dollars, especially on the net side. And you'll have better chemistry in your showroom because you'll be selling more cars. Everybody will be more happy. Your finance department's going to get more turns. They're going to believe in the system. You're going to create buy-in, but it's got to start at the top.
Yep, and more trades. And another thing I bring up that I think dealers don't weigh in, these reviews nowadays, I mean, to me, they've got to be worth a few $100, $200. I mean, literally, I don't think, especially on a big ticket item, I haven't looked at reviews. I mean, my wife looking at refrigerator looked at reviews. She would say, I like this refrigerator, but it had bad reviews. And so to get a happy customer that gets a great deal, you get them to get you some good reviews, and man, that's good ROI. But it's not, you don't see that in the bottom dollars, but when people see that, they come in with that mindset that you guys take care of your customers, and then they're willing to pay a little bit more for that type of service. And when they can see good reviews on your stores and they come in and get treated well, I think that allows you to hold some of that gross. And so, Mark, what would be that one tip?
You can sell anything. I meet highline dealers all the time, and they just sell their own product and then wholesale everything else. If you just studied each car like it was a house, and you're going to represent it that way, like you're going to be the realtor, and price it accordingly, appraise it accordingly, acquire it accordingly, market it accordingly. You can sell anything. You just have to be in the right spot and market.
Yeah, good point. Yep, and you know, that's we were just talking, Sean and I, about growing that inventory and where there's those opportunities, and you know, other makes and models. You know, sometimes we buy the same thing over and over again. We're only going to have a certain amount of growth, but you know, to be able to then pick out other things or keep those trades instead of dumping them, you know, that's great insight there. So here, guys, I appreciate your time. You know, I hope this brings value to dealers out there. You know, again, you guys are doing a wonderful job. You guys have your best months ever. Again, you guys are Highline stores that are in the double digits on your turn, and I really appreciate you guys sharing everything you guys know.
Hey, Jason, my turn has gone from 8 to 13 in just the 3 months we've been doing it.
Yep. Yep, that's a great job, and I think we could continue that. And once I try to get dealerships running at that efficiency for 3, 4, 5 months. Once you do, then you start adding units, 5 units, 10 units, because you can't just go and throw a bunch of hey, we sold 30, now let's go sell 50 and throw another 20 units at it, because your turnaround time can't handle it. Yeah. So slowly grow that, and you guys will start getting that, both volume and gross. And there is that holy grail. A lot of dealers think they have to get one or the other, but you really can get volume and gross, and I guess you guys could prove that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, appreciate your time. Again, we're going to wrap up here. Thanks, guys, and enjoy the rest of your week. So Jason's back here, and it was a great interview, both with Sean and Mark. Again, these are Highline dealerships. They're smaller town dealerships, but if these guys can do it, man, anybody can do it. And those are good tips at the end. Don't just get rid of stuff that you're not used to selling, because you can sell anything. And then look at that ROI, not just your average, not just your average gross, but look at that ROI. How fast are you turning those dollars, and how fast can you increase that gross? And that ROI is going to be real important for your stores. I appreciate you watching this show, because I know you got plenty of things going on, either watching it live or record it. Now next week I'm actually going to talk about turnaround time. I'm going to have both one a dealer, but two the service manager, and what it takes on their end, because we hear about it on our end as sales managers and stuff. We go talk to them and talk about the importance of turnaround time, but some service people just don't understand or know what our goals are and what the objectives are. And a lot of our successful stores have their dealerships read Dale Powlick's velocity book, so the service people, the F&I people, everybody's on the same page to get that velocity going. That's a good tip for you. But that's what's going to happen next week. We're going to have an interview both with the dealership and the service guy, and talk about some best practices that they do on the service end and the detail end and the reconditioning end to get these cars turned around within 3 to 5 days. So I hope you join me next week. Look forward to that interview. Thanks for your time.